What's up? It's Mike Mal, and you are listening to the Athletor Podcast, where we dive into the processes, mindsets, strategies of some of the most successful athletes and coaches from all walks of life. Athletor Podcast coming at you. This week's guest is Dylan Carew. Dylan is the owner and operator and head coach of Big Game Wrestling Club out in Iowa City. And he talks a ton about the way that his athletes have been recruited since the advent of NIL. We also take a large chunk of time to talk about the things that Dylan and Big Game Wrestling Club does to create culture both on and off the mats. He takes these amazing hunting trips with the kids, and they're all merit-based. Awesome stuff. All that and more coming at you. Don't go nowhere. Hey, everyone knows that wrestling is 90% mental. We're super excited to have partnered with Wrestling Mindset, the #1 wrestling-specific mindset program in the world. Make sure to sign up at wrestlingmindset.com using promo code Athletor25 for a $500 discount. Stop underperforming and losing to guys that you should beat. Athletor Podcast coming at you. Dylan Carew, thank you so much for jumping on, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, we got a lot to talk about, brother. So Joel and I were kind of going back and forth about the unique perspective that you can bring to the recruiting process right now. So we talk to NCAA coaches all the time. And one of the things that keeps on coming up is that recruiting has changed. And we all know it's NIL, and it's, not only do you have to, now you have to recruit the athlete, you have to talk about, the head coach can't talk about the NIL deals, but, someone has to bring up money, and now you also have to keep recruiting the athlete if they do well at your school. Like, that's a weird thing, right? Like you have to, God forbid they all American like they're supposed to. You have to re-recruit them. So that's an individual thing that's new. And then also the fact that you had recruitable athletes before this NIL stuff started, and now you have them during. I don't think that the guy like Hunter Garvin was recruited in the same way that some of your athletes are now. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, no, it kind of just like with that group of kids that we had, maybe it had just kind of gotten started, and that was back when certain colleges said that they didn't do NIL or that they weren't going to participate in it, that type of thing, and that their schools didn't do it. Other schools were doing some of it. I don't know. It was like the gray area period for like that class, where now it's just like wide open, right? It seems like,
Yeah.
You have deals reported on from people that, are essentially media outlets or personalities with inside of wrestling. So I think that that's a wild situation in itself.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? Because I don't know what to think of it. Because some of the numbers that I'm hearing, Dylan, and you've heard the same numbers.
Oh yeah.
They're outrageous. They're outrageous, and there can't be any type of return on investment there. There just can't be. There's no
zero. I mean,
there's zero return on
racehorses. That's essentially what it's turned into. Is some of these guys, I think they come to a school to help them win because they forever. But the part that always gets me is this deal. You would think that people wouldn't have. It's always interesting to know who's the business out there, especially like the colleges. It's not good business practice.
But they do.
Right.
So here's the question. Here's the question. Has the recruiting now, how has it changed your relationship with coaches at an NCAA level?
Hey, don't go anywhere. It's Mike. We'll get back to the podcast in just a second. We got to pay the bills though. Do you have an athlete that's looking to break into the social media space? We at athletorlive.com have a brand new in-depth tutorial done by none other than Caden Henshaw. If you don't know who Caden is, he's not even a Division I wrestler, yet he's got hundreds of thousands of engaged followers. Learn how to create engaging content, grow your followers, and open up new opportunities in the NIL space. Go to athletorlive.com/Caden and we'll give you the first module completely free.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's changed a lot. I mean, just simply the roster limit thing. You see less opportunities for good kids, and then over the last 2 years, why people were trying to figure that out. I mean, these last two classes, there's kids that were getting looked over, I feel like, or where they might have had an opportunity to be able to walk on somewhere and earn their spot, so to speak, at some point. There's less of that. It feels like, maybe the relationships are more business-like. Even though you might be really close with someone, you have to be able to help negotiate some of that on both sides, or at least you hear it from both sides. Then, from the college coaches and from the kids. And I think you got to be more careful about, what kids you put your name on. So if I call a coach and I'm like, hey man, this kid really deserves a shot, or like he works really hard, he does this, he does that. You got to make sure that you're getting the right kids out there.
Yeah. Okay. What about parents? Like talking to some of these parents, some of them are completely clueless, which is actually nice, which is kind of good, like believe it or
Yeah.
not, like that's a positive thing. But some of them, the ones that are more educated, they're almost like harder to deal with. How do you talk to the parents about navigating this kind of landscape?
I feel like for us, it's been maybe a little bit easier because we help our kids if they ask us. Otherwise, the parents and the kids kind of do their own thing with it. But we're lucky in the sense of that we haven't had any parents, really want to get super involved with the recruiting process. They more kind of listen to our advice, which is, let your kid go through this and make their own decision. And, at some point you're going to have a business conversation with your kid to explain to them, well, this school is going to give you this school is going to give you this. You got to look at where you're going to be after, wrestling. And sometimes, if there is money involved with that, obviously, the parents, likely are telling their kids to consider that. And that would be like the advice that I have for some of these guys, and for the parents is, you know, try to get your dream school, but it doesn't always work out. And so, there's a lot of opportunity at a lot of different places. It's just not that every school and every kid isn't going to get some giant NIL deal. And so, one of the first things we told our kids when the NIL stuff started was, if NIL is your ultimate goal, then you really don't have to worry about probably being the best you can be. Like if that ends up happening for you, great, because you've earned it along the way. But like if you're coming out of high school and that's the only thing that you're really looking forward to is getting some big amount of money and you can buy something or da da da, like, I think you're missing the point of that we're still wrestlers. I mean, and only a handful of people are ever going to make these large amounts of money anyways.
Mm. Um, so we've talked to guys like Schwab about delaying gratification, right? Like maybe don't chase the the big check right now. Maybe chase sustainability, maybe chase, in terms of NIL. Obviously, in terms of wrestling, we've always kind of preached like, hey, let's look at the big picture here. But it's becoming harder and harder when these kids hear the deals that some of these colleges are given, right? Like when you hear
Yeah.
Marcus Blaze half, 400,000 a year, when you hear Bassett getting $1 million to go to Iowa, it, I mean, I have wins against this guy. Why am I not getting that deal? You can't, like you can't not have those conversations. So how do you keep these kids thinking long term? How do you keep them thinking like in the recruiting process?
Um, I think for us specifically, it's been that, I think that I mean, first off, there's only one Marcus Blaze, one Bassett, right? And only one Jax Forrest. And that group of kids that came out that really are in my opinion, are the first kids getting these crazy amounts of money straight out of high school. Like a lot of those kids are generational, where I feel like a lot of the
Mhm.
other kids have had to work their way into it through college, and then like the last year type thing when one of these big schools needs somebody. So I think that it hasn't maybe presented itself as an opportunity for some of our kids, and that's just me being honest that we haven't had a kid
Mhm.
in the NIL era that's warranted that sort of money or even notoriety. So we haven't had to worry about that as much. But like, I mean, I get what you're saying, and it would be hard, but like at the same time, it goes back to the same message. Like, do you want to be that person or do you want to be yourself? And what are your goals? Because if you go knock off Marcus Blaze or Bassett, when you're a freshman or even when you're in high school, that stuff's going to happen. And so like that's kind of been my message to them is like if you have a chip on your shoulder because you couldn't go to your dream school because they went and paid some kid to come there, well, just go beat them.
Yeah.
And as we've seen, those big schools they'll come calling, and at the same time, I've seen kids that have came through our program that have turned down, money that is really, really hard to turn down. To stay where they're at or to go to a different school that wouldn't be involving a lot of money, and so that's good to see too, that there is still kids that are making decisions based off of their heart and not money.
That's tough though. Can you give me, you don't have to say names. I don't care, but give me an instance where where you looked at a kid and said, "You have this amount of money on the table and you're choosing to go here. Tell me why."
I'm trying to think of exactly the one situation what he said, but basically you had a big school offering x amount of money to come there plus a scholarship or whatever, and ends up just taking a scholarship to another school, and the answer basically was that I feel like I can achieve my goals here better than I can there. And as far as the money goes, if I do what I'm supposed to, I'll create those opportunities for myself. And or when I'm done with college wrestling, um, I'll get a job and I'll make that money. And I
Yeah,
think that that money wasn't necessarily life changing. Um,
right. But
we
it's
have
still, you say life changing, but they're high school kids who can't have a job, right? And they can't have an entrepreneurial
right.
type of job in high school. It's very like with our training schedule, I talk to my wife about it all the time. My daughter's getting a job, right? Like she wants to have some money in her pocket. My son
Yeah.
doesn't have that option. Like he just doesn't. There's no time that's not spent in a gym, in a wrestling room, in a sauna. So
Yeah.
any money at all is life-changing money to them. Like you really like we have to kind of consider that. Like
Yeah.
30 grand to them is life-changing. Like it's like
Yeah.
what's the new Tyler Childers song, right? It's
Dude,
like to
I
hold
think my
and
dad
blow a
gave me like
thousand dollars.
$40.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You
exactly.
think about when we were in college, like if you had $1,000, like I remember when we got paid for camps and stuff, at the end of the summer. And if you got like $700, you thought you were rich, right?
Yeah.
These dudes are buying houses and cars and jewelry and all kinds of stuff. And hopefully they have people, helping them with that money. That's the one thing is like, I haven't heard any crazy stories yet out of wrestling of people blowing the money necessarily. So it seems like people are doing a good job. And I think that that's probably, somewhat of because wrestling has a blue collar background. But, the couple kids that we've had that have gotten, some good NIL deals and stuff, I've told them, I'm like, make sure you consult with your parents and try not to touch the money, hold on to it so that when you're done with wrestling, that you have a head start on other kids. And that's what that money should be used for, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, 100%. Where do you see this going? I don't like, I think we all agree that the $1 million a year for 5 years, the $500,000 a year for 5 years is completely unsustainable. And now that there's a couple more checks and balances being put in place, um, it's probably going to change a lot of those numbers. But what do you see happening? Because you're as boots on the ground as it gets, man. Like you have a serious group of little guys, a serious group of high school athletes, and then you have some in college. So where do you think this is all
Yeah.
going?
I don't know. That's what, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if this revenue sharing thing really has any real effect. I mean, obviously I think it's gonna, and the deals or whatever that they're gonna monitor or however that works with this third party company or whatever it's gonna be. But I don't really see any of the NIL stuff changing. I mean, who's gonna police it? I mean, it was like the start of NIL when people were gonna have to turn themselves in for doing things. I don't really see any of that changing. I just think if anything, the deals will get bigger for other sports and they'll become less for sports like wrestling that don't generate that much money outside of a few programs. And ultimately, does that lead to hurting the sport? Does that lead to more kids going to smaller schools and making those smaller schools tougher? I don't know. That's
Mm,
that's kind of one of the things that I think it's done for us. We have kids that now are going to schools that maybe before they wouldn't even entertain because there's less opportunity, and that's not a bad thing for wrestling, I don't think. To have some of these smaller schools getting some of these tougher kids.
yeah, that's an interesting thing. I thought about that a lot. You know, when there was no roster cap, when there was no rev share, I I would not steer a kid away, a mid-tier kid, right? 25 ranked in and out of the rankings. I wouldn't have steered him away from a major institution if that's A, where he really wanted to go, but B, he was his upside was so big that I thought he could crack the lineup and prove himself at that institution. Well, now there's only 30 roster spots. So maybe you
Right.
give the whatever Cal, like, so right now we got a kid that was in and out of the rankings. He's going to Bakersfield. They don't have any
Yeah.
scholarship money. It's close to home. He's going to get to wrestle Division I schedule. And if he does what he's supposed to do, maybe he winds up at one of these bigger institutions, but you know, you got to prove yourself. And now Bakersfield gets a top 25 kid, which they probably haven't had since Steve Neal, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not much, right?
I mean, that's the exact situation that we just have a kid that is going to announce a commitment later this week, but to a school that we've never had a kid wrestle at that I honestly probably would have never thought we would have because it was just a smaller school, long ways from here. But because of these opportunities that are going to be created, this kid's going to get his shot to wrestle D1. And like, like you said, if you circle it all back to the NIL, you go to one of these smaller schools. I mean, look at what's happened. These kids do well there, and then the big schools donors start calling them or whatever's going on to get those kids to leave, and there'll be more opportunity, I guess, but hopefully they just understand that they still get to do the same thing that everybody else does. I mean, the goal used to be to go D1, right, is what everybody wanted, and then to be a starter. And so like you start checking those things off, and like that's the first and foremost thing, not the NIL. And I think in our organization, at least, our kids have a really good grasp of that, and we're still working hard to try to get kids opportunity, and not really focusing on that money part of it. And just if it works out for them, great. I want nothing more than, I'll be honest with you, to see our kids, if they go do well in college and they end up getting paid, great, because I know what that means for the next chapter of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's shift a little bit. I want to talk about, building the big game club, that this thing that just kept on multiplying, and I think you and I have talked about it at great length about how you started big game and why you started it, and then how it's kind of built itself. But for people that are just listening to this podcast and haven't heard me talk to you on camera before, can you give us like a brief synopsis of how Big Game started?
Yeah. So I grew up in Iowa City, wrestled for Pablo Ubasa, was my kids club coach at the University of Iowa. So I grew up wanting to be a Hawkeye. Then I wrestled for Mark Ryland in high school at Iowa City West, who was another Hawkeye legend. And then went to Iowa, had a bunch of injuries between high school and college. Didn't really finish the way I wanted to because of all that stuff, ended my career and kind of, mad at the world type situation. But I just ultimately decided that I wasn't done with wrestling. It was very important in my life, had been since I was 4 years old, with my brothers, my sister, my dad, and everybody really around us. And we always wanted our own club, and I always wanted to coach. My dad gave me every opportunity that I ever could have asked for growing up. And it just kind of was one of those things where I knew that I had a passion and something to be able to give back and create those opportunities for other people. And so I was like, well, here we go. Let's just try it. Like anything, I set out to succeed and to have something worth having. And, along the way, it's kind of blown up into something, obviously that's nationally known and that we're really, really proud of. And the one thing I always say is that we're going to do it different than everybody else, whether it's the way that we run things, the help that we have, the hunting stuff that we do, anything we do. I just have always wanted to do it different and create different opportunities for kids and make sure that they understand that wrestling isn't the only thing. I learned that, and it took me a few years to maybe bury some of those feelings that I had about not being able to compete anymore. And so that's a driving force in a lot of the things that we do.
Yeah. You brought up the hunting stuff, and that's one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, because so much of building, like, so we're putting together a course called How to Build a Wrestling Club. But here's the tricky part.
Yep.
You guys spend as much, like if you just count the minutes, as much time together off the mats as you do on the mats. And that's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Where did the idea come from
Yeah.
to start these club hunting trips, and what was the goal behind it?
It was basically, it was just the way that I grew up. My dad took us, we racing, hunting, and wrestling. That was the way that we grew up. In the state of Iowa, that's kind of a standard type thing. But my dad used to always explain to us, that wrestling was hard and that we needed to do things outside of it that were fun. And we it taught us to balance like when our dad was being a coach and when he was our dad. And so like that's where it kind of started. And so then as I transitioned into coaching, I was like, well, if we expect these kids to listen to us and at points where we demand excellence from them in really hard things, like I just don't believe that you can just do that. I think that there has to be a personal relationship and it has to be outside of wrestling. They have to know that you care about them outside of wrestling. And so for us, like the easiest way was to do what we love, which was hunting. And, we have a lot of kids that don't have the opportunity in the state of Iowa to go hunting. Because a lot of the ground is owned privately. We're not like Western states where there's big, amounts of ground where you can just go hunting and be successful. And so we started getting some leases and buying ground in Southern Iowa as our family did, and trying to build those opportunities. And what I found is, the more time that we spent with kids, the relationship grew quicker and stronger, and therefore the kids trust you the same way that you learn to trust your dad when he tells you to do something. It transitioned into that, and I'll be honest with you, some of the best memories are of those hunting things. The kids get to see a different side of us too. We share our lives together because they get to see, like our wives and kids and things like that. But you take them on an elk hunt in New Mexico and you spend a week in the mountains where there's no TV or nothing. You're just sitting there telling stories about your life with some young kid and get to learn a little bit more about their interests and their dreams outside of wrestling and their families. It requires you to get to know each other better, and that transitions into the room where that trust becomes a big deal, I think.
I agree. I agree. So, okay, not everybody is going to have Iowa whitetails running around on land, but
That's
like,
for sure.
so I mean, you guys got some monsters out there, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, what if it like, so Jason Welsh, right? Jason Welsh
Yeah,
up north in California. He brings his kids surfing all the time. Uh,
great idea.
Great idea, right? Like we have the
Yeah.
opportunity to go surfing. But here's the thing, right? Like what hiccups did you find at first? Where did you stumble with this, right? Like what mistakes did you make along the way that go, "Oh, well, I probably won't do that again."
With the club or with the hunting?
Mm, well, with the hunting stuff in general, because like it might not be hunting for someone else. It might be, I
Yeah.
don't know, something else. I don't know, whatever it is.
The only thing that I've ever had is like if somebody was like, well, why do they get to go? Or
Mm,
how do you, that was always the question we started with, which was, well, how do you pick the kids, that get to do certain things? Well, that just comes down to, who's working hard, who's consistent, who's around. Um, that was always the answers that I gave. And then along the way we've done some other things, like with one of the outfitters that we work with, the kids actually write a little essay about what the club means to them and things like that, and they pick who gets to go, that outfitter, since they donate the hunt. And so I don't know if we've ever
that
made
no,
any
that's
like
good
huge
though,
mistakes.
Dylan. That's really solid stuff though, man, because when it becomes a merit based reward, well then you had better have merit, right? Like, and that can be challenging. Why does he
Yeah.
get to go? Why don't I get to go? Well, because he was here early helping with the kids class. Because he stayed
Yeah.
late and skipped rope and whatever the heck it is, it's important that they build, now they understand that merit is what's going to be the most valuable thing in the rest of their lives, man. That's really, really awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's something that we preach all the way around too. Is just like, you know, our kids know, like there's no aspect of what we do where because you're better at wrestling than another person that you're going to get treated differently around here. They pretty well know that I don't care how good they get. I just genuinely care about if they're hearing the message. And like I said, because I know better than anybody that wrestling will be done. And I always joke with them and I tell them you don't want to be or be forced to be a landscaper, jokingly, tell them that, you're going to lay grass like me for the rest of your life. But, I just want them to understand, like, if you just work hard, like people will see you. And like, that's the biggest thing. And like, so when it comes to the hunting opportunities or, going boating or whatever it is that we do, I want them to understand, like, if you just work really hard, people will see you. They'll see your hustle. They'll see your attitude. They'll see your effort. They'll see you as a leader. They won't pick the person. I mean, I've coached kids that are great wrestlers, but that wouldn't be the first kid that I would, be happy to go do something. And that's just being truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Not every kid gets it.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. All right, last question in terms of coaching. One of the things that you've done is built an incredible culture around, and the hunting's a part of it, and the wrestling's a part of it, and the sauna's a part of it. And like you have, like, for those of you that don't know, Dylan, like, he goofs about the landscaping thing, but Big Game Wrestling Club is in a landscaping shop, meaning it's next door to a landscaping shop that his family owns, and they have built an incredible locker room that the kids can use. They built an incredible sauna that the kids can use, an ice bath that the kids can use, a full weight room that the kids can use. So you've built all this stuff, and it comes back to the culture that you've built there. How do you get these kids to start policing themselves? Because you can't be everywhere, and your message can't be the only driving force of it. How do you get these kids to really kind of create and sustain that culture within themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. Specifically, I don't know if there's one like great answer. I always just lean back to that, like, if we do a good job, of sharing the message, kids, that they get it, that the older simple things like get in your car and put your seatbelt on when you leave the facility. Don't have the music up so loud that you can't, hear a car coming. Like, just be a responsible kid. If there's trash, don't walk by it. Pick it up and put it away. If you see someone throw a towel on the ground, tell them to pick it up, or pick it up for them. It doesn't have to be your towel. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think, I've had some really good help along the way. With the Garvins, Volkers, Nactaborns, Dagans, Seatons, the list goes on and on of kids that have helped foster that, and have even, contributed their own aspects to it. I tell everybody that, like the garbage thing I just referenced. I mean, Hunter Garvin was, that kid that, I tell a story that I specifically remember. One time we were leaving junior duels and I was kind of ticked off because I thought we were waiting for Garvin, like always. I'm like, where's he at? Blah, blah, blah. And I go back in the wrestling and there's 50 janitors in there and Hunter Garvin picking up trash. Or if Hunter walks across the parking lot, he's not the kind of kid, he won't walk by it. He'll reach down and pick it up and throw it away. And so when you have kids that do that on their own, maybe some of it is that we got lucky, that we had some great kids like that, and we emphasized and point those things out. Just 2 nights ago I had a kid, Asher Whitmer. He's one of the best cross country runners in the state of Iowa in junior high. and he told me his time, what it was going to be, and he beat it that night. And you point that out to the kids to say, hey, it's not just wrestling. If you're going to do cross country, be the best at it and point out the examples that are good. And if you have kids that make mistakes and fall short of those expectations, which is reality for all of us, that, myself, I made mistakes growing up, and I paid for them. And I don't think that you don't beat a kid up for that either. And you don't bring them in front of everybody and make a big deal out of it, blah, blah, blah. You just, wait and then figure out the best way to address things that aren't good either. And if you emphasize that we all learn together type mentality, and that we're only as strong as the person sitting next to us. And I think that that's been something that that's been very helpful for us. And we have some really good coaches in here that that they're better people than me. And I've learned a lot from some of these guys, just the way that they are as fathers and husbands, and just good men.
Yeah. That's that's spot on. It's the little things. It's the little things that nobody maybe nobody sees, but doing those little things on a
Yeah.
consistent basis is probably the biggest builder of character, builder of culture that you can ask for in a wrestling room. Joel Shaw, anything else before we get to our sprint, brother?
Bring it on.
Home it comes. All right. Don't think, Dylan Carew, just fire away. What's the best wrestling shoe of all time?
Rulons. I don't know. I like the new Nike's my favorite. The Inflict 4. That's my favorite
Okay.
shoe that I've ever worn.
Okay. I like that. I like that. That's good. Yeah, those new Nikes they're solid. They're solid wrestling shoes. All right. So given everything that we've talked about, whether it be the coaching, whether it be the recruiting, whether it be building a culture, is there a book that you can recommend to somebody that's building a club or building, something along the lines of wrestling that you can recommend that they start off with?
A book, like a
Mm-hmm.
specific book. I'm
Yeah.
not a huge book guy, so I'm not gonna lie to you. But
Okay.
one of the only books that I really love is David Goggins. The couple books that he's got. I think there's some good things in there that discipline wise, and just some things for coaching that motivate kids in a certain way that are good. But I think anybody that's building something, you should just share your life lessons with kids, and that's the easiest way to building a culture from in getting anything strong, if you ask me.
Fair enough. Let's see if there you go. Can't hurt me. I like that one. Okay.
Yeah,
Goggins lives down here, dude. We see him running down in San Diego all the time. Dude, the dude just runs. Just Forrest Gump in it
I'd
all over
love
the
to meet
place.
him.
Yeah. I never wanted to stop him. I think he'd like try to slit my throat or something. Okay. You only
Yeah,
get four. They got to be American. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
uh, Jordan Burroughs, Dan Gable, John Smith. I'm
Hmm.
trying to.
Fourth is always the toughest.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this not long ago, but I mean, David Taylor's got to be up there. I mean, probably, you
Okay.
know,
So we
David
got
has been
JB.
so good since we were kids.
Hold on. You got JB, Gable, Smith, and then David.
I mean, I think David, Kyle Schneider, is going to be right in there. Bruce Baumgartner, obviously, has to be. He's got the most medals. That's always a thing for me. Like, I don't know. Do you just is it medals or is it winning? Is it the way you win? Do you factor in
It's your
coaching?
list, brother. It's your list. I think
Yeah,
about this stuff all
I
the time, but it's important to
I'd
you.
be happier to put I'd be happier to put together a list of like 20.
Yeah, well, you don't get
You know what I
20, you only
mean?
get
I don't.
four.
Right. I think as importance of wrestling, it has to be JB Gable, um, Bruce John Smith.
Okay, that's a fair list. That is a very fair list. Okay, last one. You get a magic wand, and you get to change one thing about the sport of wrestling, and it changes tomorrow. What would it be?
Step on the scale, step on the mat.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You make it sound so easy because it is. Because it is. It
Yeah.
really is that easy. Like we could fix this problem pretty much tomorrow. And yeah, that's a great one, man. Mat side weigh-ins is a very doable
Yeah.
thing.
Just
And we
let it rip. I mean, give them an allowance for that. Shoes weigh a different, amount, and singlets can vary, but it's not by much. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It might be a pound or, at most, I would think would be the difference between shoes and a singlet.
Yeah. What do
So-
they give? What do they give? Like 0.9 or something like that. Like
And
in
MMA and stuff.
Yeah. It's like 0.9. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. That's fair.
That would be the coolest. Then kids never have to worry about what weight they go, and coaches and parents don't have to. That's the worst part of our sport is cutting weight.
Yeah. 100%. How many kids have split this sport in the name of weight cutting is astronomical. Unbelievable. All right. Dylan Carew,
At a
thank
young
you
age.
so much for jumping on, brother.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Always fun. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Wait. Don't go anywhere before you hit that next button. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, do us a huge favor. Click that subscribe button. And if you're so inclined, leave a review and share it.